Meet a strong woman who was left to die after heart surgery. But she shocked doctors by coming back to life twice. And when she woke up, she found out that her husband had cheated on her. How did she take her revenge? It was a beautiful summer day. The sun was shining and birds were singing. It was the perfect day for a picnic. But inside the hospital, it was a different story. The usually bustling halls were eerily silent. No one uttered a sound as they walked past the intensive care unit. Inside the ICU, machines beeped incessantly, their rhythm matching the pounding of Linda's heart. The doctors gathered around her bed were grim-faced. They had done everything they could, but there was nothing more they could do. Her heart had stopped beating. All they could do now was wait. Linda had always been a fighter. She had overcome many obstacles in her life, and she wasn't about to let this one defeat her. As the doctors prepared to pronounce her dead, Linda's eyes fluttered open. She looked around her and saw the worried faces of the medical staff. She tried to speak, but all that came out was a weak cough. Don't leave me," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. "I'm not ready to go." The doctors and nurses were taken aback by her sudden recovery. They had seen countless patients come through the doors of the ICU, but none had ever made a comeback like this. After a week of monitoring, it was determined that Linda had miraculously recovered from the surgery and was able to be discharged from the hospital. She went home with her husband, Mark, by her side, promising to take care of her. Little did she know that he was only pretending to be a good husband. In reality, he was thinking about how he could finally get rid of her. Linda had undergone open-heart surgery. The surgery was a success and she was able to make a full recovery. However, during the surgery, a nurse had accidentally cut one of her coronary arteries, which caused a blockage that led to a heart attack. When Linda's heart stopped beating, the doctors were able to restart it, but this resulted in brain damage. When she woke up from the coma, she couldn't remember anything before the surgery. This meant that she didn't know about the affair her husband was having behind her back. She was weak and tired, so she decided to take a nap. She didn't want to tell Mark about her condition, because she didn't want him to worry about her, so she just lied to him and said that she needed some rest. He agreed and left her alone in the bedroom. She lay there for what seemed like hours, but in reality was only a few minutes. When she opened her eyes, she saw that Mark was standing in the doorway with a strange look on his face. "What is it?" she asked him. "Nothing," he replied quickly. "You just looked like you were having a nightmare." She smiled weakly and closed her eyes again. She didn't want to tell him about her memory loss. She didn't think it would do any good. As the days passed, Linda began to feel better. She started to walk around the house and do simple chores. She was still weak, but she was getting stronger every day. One day, she was browsing through old photo albums when she came across a picture of herself and Mark on their wedding day. She looked beautiful in the white dress, and Mark looked handsome in his suit. There was a time when they were madly in love with each other. Where did it all go wrong? She wondered. Just then, Mark entered the room. He looked at the album in her hands and asked, "What are you doing?" "Oh, nothing," she replied. "I was just looking at some old photos." He nodded and walked away without another word. Linda sighed. She knew that something was off with him, but she couldn't figure out what it was. One evening, Linda was watching TV when the news came on. The anchor was reporting on a recent survey that had found that 1 in 7 married men were cheating on their wives. "That's disgusting," she said, shaking her head. Mark, who was sitting next to her, didn't say anything. He just kept staring at the floor. Linda looked at him curiously. Why was he so upset? Was he one of those men? She asked herself. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Linda turned to Mark and said, "Can you get that? I don't feel well." He nodded and went to answer the door. Linda went back to the television, but she couldn't concentrate on what she was watching. She kept thinking about Mark and what could be going on in his mind. Was he cheating on her? The thought was crazy. She loved Mark with all of her heart. There was no way he would cheat on her, was there? Mark came back into the room and sat down next to her. Who was at the door? She asked him. "No one important," he replied quickly. "I'll go check on dinner," she said, getting up from the couch. As she walked away, she heard him mumble something under his breath. She couldn't quite make out what it was, but it sounded like he was saying, "Thank God she doesn't remember." She froze in her tracks. What did he mean? Was he really cheating on her? If so, why? Did he do it out of love, or just because he could? She didn't know what to think. She felt confused and betrayed. How could he do this to her after everything they'd been through together? As the weeks went by, Linda became more and more suspicious of Mark. She started to notice small things that he didn't seem to notice. For example, he would often come home late from work, and he would always smell like perfume. On one occasion, she even found a lipstick in his pocket that wasn't hers. She confronted him about it, but he just lied and said that it was his coworkers. Linda was heartbroken. She didn't want to believe that her husband was cheating on her, but the evidence was right there in front of her. She started to withdraw from him and spend most of her time alone. She couldn't understand why he would do this to her. She had loved him with all her heart and had been there for him through thick and thin. What had she done to deserve this? One night, Linda couldn't take it anymore. She confronted Mark and demanded an explanation. He broke down and confessed everything. He told her about the affair he had been having for months and how he had planned to leave her for his coworker. Linda was devastated. She couldn't believe that the man she loved could treat her so badly. She packed her things and left him, taking all the money in their joint account. She moved into a small apartment and tried to piece her life back together. She was determined not to let her husband's infidelity defeat her. She started seeing a therapist to help her cope with the trauma of the affair and the surgery. With the help of the therapist, Linda began to heal. She realized that she deserved better than Mark, and that she was strong enough to move on without him. She threw herself into her work and started spending more time with friends and family. Slowly but surely, she rebuilt her life. One day, Linda received a call from Mark. He begged her to take him back and promised to change, but she was done with him. She didn't want to waste another minute of her life on someone who had treated her so poorly. She told him as much and hung up the phone. A few weeks later, Linda met someone new. His name was David, and he was everything that Mark wasn't. Kind, caring, and honest. Linda fell in love with him quickly, and soon they were inseparable. Together, they began planning a future together, one that didn't include Mark. Meanwhile, Mark was spiraling out of control. He had lost Linda, both the love of his life and the sex of his dreams. He was lonely and miserable. He tried to make amends with her, but she wouldn't have it. He tried to find someone new, but no one could replace her. He was trapped in his own hell, and there was no way out. One day, Mark was driving home from work when he saw Linda and David at a restaurant. He pulled over and watched them as they talked and laughed together. It was like a scene from a movie, and Mark was heartbroken. He realized that he had made a huge mistake when he cheated on her. He should have fought for their marriage instead of giving up on it, but it was too late now. Linda had moved on, and he was just a memory. Mark never saw Linda again, but he often thought about her. He wondered how she was doing and if she was happy. He hoped that she was, even though he knew that he didn't deserve it. He lived out the remainder of his life alone, haunted by the ghost of the woman he once loved. If you liked this story, subscribe to the channel to stay updated on our latest videos.